Now, there are millions of theories and conclusions that certain creators and members of the community reach when we talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. And these conclusions could spark from a few to a dozen details, as the universe that is FNAF will never disappoint when it comes to how much details it has to offer. It's a lot if you didn't know. But sometimes these people get accused for misregarding information or chasing catchy titles. And the same case applies for this YouTuber, me. No, not them, literally me, Host TV, this guy. I posted a video not long ago about the details of FNAF 4 and how it solves some of the mysteries we've been having with the timeline. And let's just say, not all people agreed with my take on those details. The most noticeable one, if you haven't seen that video, is that I suggest Cryingchild dies in 1987. And your first thought would be, what an idiot! Didn't Scott Cawthon himself confirm that Cryingchild dies in 1983? Roll the laugh track, look at the scrub. Did he just forget? Did he just want to spread misinformation? Is he just a liar? Well, no, not exactly. You see, when it comes to FNAF 4, there's a lot of details that were left unanswered by the community, and the reason is, every time you fill one of the gaps, another one just opens up. So I tried to fill them in a way that would leave the least amount of gaps opened, but my mistake was rushing through it and just focusing on filling the gaps, not what I filled them with. Now, if you've seen my other videos or just been in the comments, you know that I love outlier theories and what-if scenarios, because they always pivot evidences in a new direction you would never think of, and may cause you to reconsider what you think is the right interpretation. And that's basically what happened with the comment section on these videos. For example, people suggesting that Baby is the one who says I will put you back together, or that Roxy is the one who murdered Glamrock, Bonnie and Ruin. Now, do I agree with them? Maybe not. But do I hear them out to see how they reached to that conclusion? Yes. Do I consider how the evidences they bring could help the community have a new view on things? Absolutely. Do I disregard their entire theory because of one detail that may have gone wrong? No. Because that's not fair at all. Some would say that would be cherry picking, right? Now, I'm not saying this was a what-if video, and I'm not saying that this video was just misinformation and lies either. I did get some things wrong. My ego allows me to say it. But just saying the word sorry isn't going to do anything. You have to really mean it. But I got a better idea. Instead of being sorry, let's be better. But what I believe these two details are pointing toward... Hopefully this doesn't make a movie happen. If you haven't seen my other video, I bring two evidences to suggest that Cryingchild dies in 1987. One is Mangle's appearance in the girls' room in the FNAF 4 house, and another one is plushies of the FNAF 2 animatronics. And I was so wrong. User LuigiFan305 actually brings a very good point that completely went over my head at the time of making the video. They mentioned, sorry, I don't know your gender. They mentioned that the toy animatronics designs existed not in 1987, not in 1983, but all the way back to the 70s. As we see this artwork that has Scott's approval on it, showing old circus theme animatronics that we believe belong to the Carnival of Fall Fest. How do we know they belong to the Carnival of Fall Fest? Well, because these are the same animatronics designs that we see on the Fall Fest carousel in Help Wanted 2. And what other animatronic is on that same carousel? A white and pink Foxy with a hook on his hand. The only other time we've seen this design, it was in FNAF World of all games. But here's the question, why? Well, I believe that the grand reopening of the FNAF 2 location was an homage not to the first Freddy's location, but to the Carnival of Fall Fest, recreating the same animatronics with the same circus-themed features. So these toy plushies in FNAF 4 are not from the toy animatronics of FNAF 2, but rather from the Fall Fest animatronics in this artwork. In my previous video, I suggested for there to be plushies of these animatronics, they have to have been there for a very long time. Well, it makes sense with Fall Fest, as these animatronics have been there since 1970s. With this Mangle probably being the destroyed version of the Fall Fest Foxy from the fire of 1983. That probably William left for his daughter to play with or something. I don't know. So as you can see, all the evidence I brought to say another thing completely led me down another interpretation and a different conclusion. Now do you get my point? Make sure you always share your thoughts in the comments below. You never know if you actually solved something or not. But something to add to Luigi fan's theory, cause I can't let him have all the fun, can I? Is something that has always been bothering me about FNAF 4, and it is that we never see a Freddy Fazbear's location anywhere. All of the game is either in Fredbear's family diner, or Crying Child's house, or the path between the two. Even though the Crying Child seems to love Freddy and friends just as much as I do, so why are they absent? Well, I believe it's because the location is closed down for investigation of a missing children's incident. I will die on this hill than to accept that the MCI is a result of Crying Child's death, because if that's the case, then God knows, or better to say Scott knows at this point, what the Crying Child saw, why is he so scared of that place to begin with, why is William in his bunker to begin with, why does Fredbear say we are still your friends, and what the heck does I will put you back together mean if William never actually did put him back together? And with the new discoveries of Hyperdroid, now we know that Cassidy is the one talking to the Crying Child, who now is called Dave, I guess, and the one who puts his memories and his name back together, might I add. Something I also talk about in this video that a lot of you seem to agree with, by the way. Yes, small victories, baby. Small victories. But speaking of, something that you guys didn't agree with was Charlie being the first to die of William's victims. Now this one has a lot of evidence pointing towards both directions.
First inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this.
And in the graphic novels, her gravestone showed the same date, 1980 to 1983, and also that her death is completely out of character from William, killing in an obvious way without even using his suit, leaving evidence behind, all pointing towards this kill to be his first. But to add to that, there is also the grave order in Hawana 2 that shows the puppet as the last to die, the fact that Chica says I was the first and I've seen everything, and also that in the Giving Gifts minigame, the puppet gives them control after all the other killed have been murdered. But that begs the question, which one is the true answer? Is the first wound inflicted on Henry Charlie's death or not? Well, what if I told you Midnight Motorist was the answer all along? I know, I was shocked too. I briefly talked about Midnight Motorist in my previous video, but now going back on my evidences, I'm not so sure about my answer anymore, and it's because of these set of footprints outside the window. The only animatronics with these three toes on their feet are Golden Freddy and Golden Bonnie, and also the Shadow animatronics. Now ID's Fantasy goes over this third option pretty thoroughly in her video, but my major problem with that theory is this part.
If later that night does refer to Charlie's death, it would give there some purpose for him to be led there, as well as potentially explain why he's so scared of the animatronics. If the Crying Child got there and found Charlie's body with the puppet animatronic collapsed on top of it, he could have misunderstood that as it being the animatronic that killed her, sparking his fear of the animatronics.
Well, if that's the case, then why doesn't Crying Child, Dave, just have nightmares about the puppet? Actually, he has nightmares about every animatronic but the puppet. Well, not every animatronic. That would truly be a nightmare. So that leaves us with these two dummies, but this dummy can't be it either, as William was off killing Charlie, and I don't think spring locks work good in rain, if you know what I mean. So the only animatronic these footprints could belong to is Golden Freddy. Well, the idea of animatronics coming to people's houses isn't new, as in the books Chica comes to Susie's house to bring her into the afterlife, as Susie and Chica seem to have a spiritual connection. Actually, this idea of a spiritual connection has been repeated so many times within the books. And might I remind you, who does Crying Child Dave has a bond with? Golden Freddy, or better to say, Cassidy. Actually, the connection between the two has been repeated so many times in the survival logbook, the fact that they both might possess the same animatronic, the fact that also they're both one of the biggest mysteries about this franchise, all of them seem to connect that these two have some kind of a spiritual connection. And we know, according to the movie, that Golden Freddy is able to get out of the pizzeria and interact with the outside world. But if this is the case, then MCI has to have happened for Golden Freddy to be there and lure Dave, presumably, into the pizzeria. And according to the grave order, Cassidy is the last of the MCI, so then Charlie should be the last death for Midnight Motorist to finally make sense. Editor's note, you might be saying that Charlie has to have gifted the animatronics life for them to move around, but in that very minigame she does give life to all of them except Golden Freddy, suggesting that Cassidy had control more than and earlier than all the other children. So, when it comes to the MCI, I am 99.9% sure it happened before Crying Child's death. As to why it happened, I still stand by my point of we're gonna learn more about it in Secret of the Mimic. My guess, Mrs. Afton is part of that reason, and probably the Graven Midnight Motorist belongs to her, and that's why she is absent in FNAF 4. Sorry to user Afton PH90W for not making a part 2 of my previous video. I had to get some things right before we moved on to a sequel. Speaking of a sequel, make sure you subscribe not to miss that very sequel, and a lot more cool stuff coming up, like the week before and Into the Pit, and you know, maybe even another game completely. But until then, make sure you go check out my previous video and see how wrong I was or what things I may have gone right. And if you wonder what would have happened if the Mimic didn't freaking exist, make sure you check the video on the left. I've been your host, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!